And welcome to a new edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns here on STLSportspage.com. And Mike, whatever metaphor you want to use, the smoke is cleared, the dust is settled. We have had some time to reflect now and think about the trade that was finalized on Monday night with the Cardinals sending Brendan Donovan to the Mariners. They got a package that includes 3 minor league prospects as well as 2 draft picks. So what's your overall reaction to the deal now that you've had a little time to think about it?
There are many different ways to break this trade down because there are a lot of things happening here. But I think the first thing we need to discuss before we dive into the specifics is we can all agree and admit that it's a shame that we got to this point. And however we want to talk about the Cardinals getting to this point based on the not having minor league prospects ready for the major league level, and however you want to dive into that, the first thing first is I think as a Cardinal fan and as supporters of this team and this market, we're sad to see Brendan go, right? He's a good player. He's a good guy. He plays the game hard. He plays the game the right way. He's an easy guy to root for. He's a good clubhouse guy. All his teammates like him. So I think the first thing to say first is that I think we're sad to see him go, and it's a shame that we got to this point, but I think there's hope on the horizon with this trade.
Yeah, I think you have to break it down in two different ways, and we'll get into the specifics as far as who the Cardinals obtained and what our kind of thoughts are about each of those players in a second. But I think you have to look at it this way, and you and I had this conversation after the trade was finalized, off the air last night. Would the Cardinals have been a better team in 2026 if Brendan Donovan was on this team? And the answer is yes. But they would have been a better team with Wilson Contreras and Sonny Gray too. And unfortunately, where the Cardinals are, as you said, a shame that they're in this situation. And Chaim Bloom has made no secret of this from the day he took office. He said that if we have a chance to prioritize long term over short term, we're going to pick the long term, and that's exactly what he's done with this trade, as he did with those other trades. Donovan had 2 years left of under his current contract to be a free agent after the 2027 season. And the Cardinals just didn't see themselves being in a position to compete in these 2 years. Now, I guess you could also throw 27, the whole question about what's going to happen in 27 because of the labor agreement not being finalized. So, but with that in mind, they're building for 28 and 29, and they're not making a secret of it. And there was no way to guarantee that Brendan Donovan would be part of those teams as he hits free agency.
I think one thing is very clear right off the bat, right? This is Chaim's team, and Chaim is really turning it around to, for the last 3 or 4 years, I think we could safely say that Mo was kind of trying to just put a Band-Aid on it to get into the playoffs, and the team was close, and they were just trying to work there. Well, Chaim doesn't want to just put Band-Aids on and get to the postseason. He wants to win, and he wants to win for a long time, and it's clear that he's building that with the way this is. I'm going to be the positive one here for a second. And I really think of the 3 position players that we traded, Donovan, Contreras, and Arenado, Donovan's going to be the only one that we actually miss. I don't think we're losing much in looking at the other guys. So I kind of broke it down for a little bit. Combined between the 3 of them, they had an average between the 3 of them of 260. But both Contreras and Arenado were below that, because Donovan hit 287 last year. So you're going to miss that a little bit. But combined between the 3 of them, you had 42 home runs, which is not really a big number that jumps out by any means in 3 players, right? How many teams across the board had 1 player hit more than 40 last year? And I think that's something to look at. But here's the thing that it does. It opens up the hole for J.J. Weatherhold. Mm-hmm. We both talked about this before. So are we better with Donovan on this team? I think we are, yes. But that also means there's less options for people to play because there's too many guys and not enough spots. If JJ's here, we want him to play every day.
And here's the other thing to look at this way, in a couple of different thoughts is, I think one of the criticisms we had of this club and the leadership of this club the last couple of years was that they were not committing to anything. They were going halfway. Oh yeah, we're going to rebuild, but we want to keep Arenado here, and we want to keep Contreras here, and we want to keep Sonny Gray here. So they weren't really going through an honest rebuild. Well, you can't say that about this team now. I mean, they are definitely 100% bought in to this rebuild, or as Bill DeWitt called it during the winter warmup, a build. He didn't even call it a rebuild. So that's number one. I mean, you disagree with the direction of the franchise if you want, but it's clear that they do have a strategy, that they do have a goal that they're working toward, and there's nothing halfway about it. That's number one. And number two is you take the three different position players, as you mentioned. Okay, so Contreras is not here to play first base. Alec Burleson is now your new first baseman. Can you expect a similar production from him as you did from Contreras? I think yes, because he hit very similar numbers last year when he played mostly left field, but also played some at first base. So I don't think you're losing, much offensively there. Number two, Gorman will play now, obviously figures in to be your primary third baseman. So JC will still get some games there, I think. But can he match basically what Arenado's done and given you the last couple of years? I think the answer to that question is yes. And then the question then becomes JJ versus Donovan. And I think your expectation levels are a little bit lower there simply because of the fact that JJ will be entering his rookie season. As high as the Cardinals are on him, as high as everybody in baseball is on JJ. And I saw one prediction, I think it was on ESPN, that already has labeled him one of the favorites to be the National League Rookie of the Year in 2026. You can't expect him to be Donovan from the get-go simply because of the lack of experience. But yeah, I think there is a lot of upside here, and I think fans sit back and look at it. And I know you and I are a little bit different maybe than some of the fans who only kind of concentrate on what's happening in the big league level, but because we spend so much time watching what's going on at the minor leagues. But if you do have invested your interest in some of these guys as they come up through the system, I think that there's potential here. And I really think that, maybe the performance that these guys are going to give you on the field, because they're going to have a clarity, they have a path to playing time, maybe it's going to surprise some people a little bit.
And let me just make this clear, okay? Whatever article you were reading projecting that for JJ Weatherholt, they took it from our podcast months ago. When I said that. So I just wanted to be clear that I stated this before everyone else did, that he will win that, okay? And here's what I was going to say. So in your three offensive production of those guys, they combined for 260. What did JJ hit last year between AA and AAA? 306. So let's say he doesn't hit 300 in the big leagues the first year. What's he drop on average? 20, 30, 40 points maybe? He's still hitting above 260, which is better than those guys there. And where I think you're going to see some positives is you're really taking some of the holes out of this lineup. Now, for example, Alec Burleson versus Wilson Contreras. Let's just compare the numbers for a second. Contreras hit 257 last year. Burleson hit 290. Burleson played 139 games. Contreras played 135. Burleson struck out 79 times. How many do you think Contreras struck out?
More than that.
142.
Almost twice as many.
Almost twice as many. So you're taking 63 strikeouts out of the lineup. Now, what you are doing, though, is the flip side. Nolan Arenado didn't strike out very much. Nolan Gorman strikes out a lot. So, you're trading some positives for some negatives here and there, but I really don't think from an offensive production you lost that much. Now, it comes down to a couple guys performing like we said they would. I think you and I both talked about one of the biggest guys that has some pressure on him now in the way this is set up is Lars Nootbaar, because your backup left fielder now is probably Nathan Church, would be my guess. And, you don't have Burleson or Donovan as the safety net to go out there and play left. So you're going to need Nootbaar to be healthy, and you're going to need him to play well. But it comes down to also Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker. And we say it every year, but at what point are they going to figure it out and get going? Because they're two huge pieces to this team. And if they do, I don't think offensively we lost much. I think we're going to be a competitive team, and I think we're going to be a fun team to watch.
And that's no disrespect at all toward Brendan Donovan, because as we all stated right off the top of this podcast, we think the Cardinals would have been a better team without him. He's been a great player here for a number of years. He's been a terrific, ambassador for the game. All the work he does with the military. He was very kind to come out and do some charity appearances for our Rainbows for Kids charity. He always was very professional, very courteous, and I think the club is going to definitely miss his leadership. But just it wasn't. He was a victim of timing, is what it really comes down to. And I think that the Cardinals felt like they needed to make this move to get better the next 3 or 4 years, and it took a while. I think the one thing you will say about Chaim Bloom in this trade, and we talked about this from the get-go, is the salary dumps that they made with the other 3 trades were different than this trade. This was a baseball trade. This was not a salary dump. They could have afforded to keep Brendan Donovan on this team from a financial standpoint, but they felt like the prospects and the draft picks that they've got better. I mean, will this how will you grade this trade going forward? I don't think you can answer that question today. I mean, even you can look at the prospects and what they've done. You can look at the prospects and their potential, and you can sit here and look at the 2 draft picks that they're going to get in next summer's draft. But we honestly won't know how good those players are, or who the last 2 players are who are coming to the Cardinals because of this deal until a few years down the road. So it's impossible to kind of put a grade on this trade today and to say well, it was a steal, because you just don't know. It all depends on how these players perform that they got in the deal.
And the initial reaction of Cardinals fans right now is we're sad to see Donovan go, right? I think the thing about Brendan Donovan is he's a good player, but he's a good complementary player to those pillars in your lineup. And right now the Cardinals are kind of missing that pillar in their lineup. So you're trying to build around Brendan Donovan, and that really shouldn't be where his game is. He's going to be very good in Seattle. And I have no question and no doubt about that we're going to miss him because of that. But if you look at that lineup, he's going to bat leadoff in Seattle because they're building him around Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena, Cal Raleigh. They're building him around the big pieces. Well, where's our big piece that we would build Donovan around that to be complementary? We don't have that. I think in a few years down the road, when we have that, we're going to want a player like Donovan back here. And maybe that's somebody who comes up throughout the one of these draft picks that we get or however. But right now, like you said, it's a matter of timing. He doesn't fit with the way this team is built right now.
Or how about 2028 when he becomes a free agent? Nothing would preclude the Cardinals from re-signing him to a long-term contract.
And it wouldn't. But what you're doing right now is you're allowing yourself to see these guys develop a little bit more. And I think there's some guys in this lineup that could be a pillar in this lineup for a long time. But this year is the year where they just need to figure it out.
Well, I'll give you a reaction of 2 Cardinal fans to the trade, and it happened after the deal was announced yesterday. My grandkids and your nephews, 10 years old and 8 years old, when told that the Cardinals had traded Brendan Donovan to the Mariners, the first reaction was, did we get Cal Raleigh? And the second reaction was, did we get Julio Rodriguez? Or how about Ken Griffey Jr., even though he's 50-something years old? And when the answer was no, we got prospects, we got scammed. So I think that's a reaction that maybe some other Cardinal fans have because they don't know anything about it.
And I think
they're going to get to know these guys. So it's something.
They will. And it's really hard to judge trades right now when you're not getting a major league player back. It's not a 1-for-1 type deal. Do I wish we would have gotten a bigger prospect in this deal back? Yes. Do I think it's a little underwhelming? Yes. But at the end of the day, we needed prospects that we can either A, pan into something that supplement this lineup, or B, next year, flip to become that pillar of the lineup.
Thanks, of course, to the Drury Hotels and all of our other sponsors for keeping this podcast free and available to you, as all of our programming and also of our stories up on STLSportsPage.com. Do have a fairly lengthy narrative story about the trade that you can find on STLSportsPage.com if you want to read about some of these guys that the Cardinals are picking up in the deal. And all right, so let's break down the trade a little bit and kind of go through some of these guys. And the first thing we're all going to have to do is learn how to pronounce the new 22-year-old switch pitcher's name. So we're going to give it our best shot here, and hopefully we won't screw it up. Your Angelo Sena is how we're told it's pronounced. So he's going to be 22 years old. He split last season, his first pro season between high A and double A. Finished the year with 7 games at double A Arkansas, actually against the same league, the Texas League that the Cardinals double A affiliate plays in Springfield. Product of Mississippi State, was born in the Netherlands, grew up in Curaçao. He's a natural left-handed pitcher, but taught himself to pitch right-handed. We're going to be interesting to see how the Cardinals react to the fact that he has pitched both ways. The Mariners had projected him to come to their spring training camp as a non-roster pitcher and said he was going to concentrate on pitching right-handed. So we'll be curious to see 2 things when the Cardinals kind of comment officially about the trade later on Tuesday, and that's going to be what their plans are for him in spring training, if he'll be coming to the big league camp or if he's going to go to the minor league camp, and then where projected you will see him start the regular season, and if they will want him to throw both ways, or if they're going to also say, we want you to pitch exclusively right-handed, because that's where every scouts say that's his higher upside.
It's kind of a cool thing that he can throw both-handed and do it well. But looking at the numbers and looking at the reports on what everyone said about him, is it looks he projects much better as a right-handed starter. He's sitting 95 plus with a fastball there that looks pretty free and easy. So that's, when you look at the upside of these players, he's 22 years old throwing 95 with swing and miss stuff. And that's what this team was desperately missing on the rotation staff. So, you can get excited about a player like that, knowing that there's potential for him in the long run.
120 innings, 120 strikeouts, and 108 innings combined between those two levels last year. The second player the Cardinals obtained from the Mariners is a young outfielder, 20-year-old Ty Pete. He played at high A last year, hit 19 home runs, but also struck out a whole bunch of times and only hit 217. And you have an interesting comp already that you've heard some people making about talking about this young outfielder, another former first-round pick of the Mariners.
Yeah, if a lot of people read your stories or, have seen you talk about Joshua Baez, a lot of people have talked about how he took a pretty bad year from a lot of strikeouts and went, worked through the Cardinals system that they created for him and got rid of that. And last year really skyrocketed his career. So I've heard very similar things to the same way along Ty Pete. If he can kind of go through a similar program that Baez did, you could see him skyrocket it here pretty soon, because the thing about Pete is he's got some raw power, and if you can hit, you're going to find a way to succeed. So hopefully he can cut down the strikeouts while doing that.
And we've talked about before the fact that, if you look at the top 30 prospects in the Cardinal system now and how many new guys there are on that list because of the trades that they made last year during the deadline, and then now, of course, the trades that they've made this winter, a lot of those top 30 guys are pitchers. I mean, they need some young position player prospects to kind of break through, and he maybe have that chance. I would think he's probably a guy who could start the year in Peoria just to kind of get his feet wet a little bit in the system, and then, potentially maybe move up later on in the season. So it seemed like this deal kind of came together over the weekend after the Giants signed Luis Arraez as a free agent, because he was the guy, the club that the Cardinals also were talking to. And we know they had a lot of interest in Brendan Donovan, but it also took the involvement of a third team, Tampa Bay, to kind of push this thing kind of past the finish line. And that was to be able to get these draft picks. So, and another prospect, the player the Cardinals are getting from Tampa Bay in this deal is Colton Ledbetter, who's a 24-year-old outfielder. He played last year at Double-A in the Tampa Bay system, did have 37 stolen bases, so apparently has a pretty high upside as well. And the interesting fact is he and Senya were teammates at Mississippi State for one season before he was drafted. So a little familiarity with him there too.
And at this point in time, if you don't know anything about the Cardinals outfield prospects, just assume they bat left-handed, because that's all that we managed to get at this point in time right now. So at some point we need a right-handed bat. But like you were just saying,
which could be Baez, by the way,
and it could be Baez here pretty soon, right? Yeah, I'm not saying that it can't be, and I'm not holding out, and I'm not throwing away the hope on Jordan Walker. I still think that he could be that guy when he comes through. But long story short, there are a lot of prospects that we're building this team around that if one or two of these guys pan out pretty quickly from the pitching staff, then you have a few more options to trade them to get that big bat when you need it. So that's the depth that the Cardinals didn't have a few years ago that they're building back now.
Rob Raines and Mike Raines here talking about the Brendan Donovan trade on STLSportspage.com, or Raines on the Cardinals podcast. And I think that the other thing about this is that the deal to me, and again, we'll find out in 3 or 4 years from now, basically, but the two kind of lottery tickets in this trade package are the two draft picks, the competitive balance picks, that one coming from Seattle, one coming from Tampa Bay. As of now, they're supposed to be the 68th and 72nd pick in this draft. The order is still not finalized for the draft because of a couple things. There's a couple free agents yet who haven't yet signed, and if those teams that lose those players get a balance pick, it could affect the order just a little bit, but it'll be relatively close to those two selections. And with their own picks, the Cardinals now, as of now, have 6 of the top 86 picks in this draft. So you talk about getting a lot of young talent into the system in one big fell swoop. That's a good way to do it.
And we've talked a lot about how important the draft is, because who are the last 2 first-round draft picks out of the Cardinals that are knocking on the door here very soon, right, to be ready to go? One of them is probably going to start second base every day this year. So, to have JJ drafted, 2 years ago, basically, and to already be up. So it shows you how important those top end draft picks are. So the other thing that we talked about a lot too is, and it can't be overshadowed at this point, is this was a baseball trade, not a salary trade. But when you combine and look at this team now, they've set themselves up to win whatever happens after this new CBA agreement. They've got some money that they can spend to sign some
Exactly.
players.
Here's I did the math, and obviously every time I do math, it's a little bit shaky. So apologies in advance if I screwed something up. But we do know this, that when the trades that sent Gray, Contreras, and Arenado out of town, they committed to paying $59 million out of the money that they were owed in their contracts. As of now, doing the projections, and some of these players have not yet signed because of the fact that they are pre-arbitration or they're going to be making close to the minimum salary as a first-year player. Their payroll right now sits at just over $55 million. So they're going to be paying more money to players who aren't here than players who are here in 2026. Highest paid player under contract for this year, $12.5 million, is Dustin May, their big free agent signing. The only other guy making more than $5 million will be Lars Nootbaar, as of now at $5.2 million. And then you got to go down to $4.2 million for Romero, $4 million for Palante. Stanek, the other free agent they signed, is $3.5 million. Burleson, $3.3 million. And then you got nobody else making more than $3 million. So and nobody officially under contract for 2027. Obviously, the Cardinals have control over the younger players. They can't go anywhere, but they're not officially signed. So yeah, they cleared kind of the decks financially after this year for, could do great things going forward.
But on the flip side of that, I will say there's a problem if your third highest player on your team is Andre Palante. So there's an issue there for sure. Or maybe he's fourth. I didn't totally catch that, but he's right there.
He's fourth. He'll be third if they trade Romero.
Okay, so yeah, regardless, that's a problem. But what it does is it opens them up. So regardless of how this shakes out after this season, they've got the ability to go out and spend some money to sign some players, which puts them in a very good position, because there's going to be some players that are signing a few short-term deals now or whatever, or however this shakes out, players may have to get traded or contracts reworked or whatever, and we're in the spot where we can take advantage of some of that.
The other interesting fact is, as of now, the projected starting lineup, oldest player in that lineup, Lars Nootbaar, who's just turned 28 years old. So yeah, they're going to be young, they're going to be hungry. Are they going to make mistakes? Sure, they're going to make mistakes, but I think it's going to be exciting to see what these kids can do.
And here's the thing too. This team's going to be fun to watch because they're going to play good baseball. They're going to be good fundamental people. Now, it just kind of depends on how well some of these people hit the ground running, right? We've seen some rookies hit the ground and really struggle. But if JJ hits the ground running and comes out and hits 290 or 300, this team's going to be pretty good. And if Gorman and Walker figure out what they're doing, cut down the strikeouts a little bit, the potential is there. That's the question, right? Can they go out and perform?
I do. I am happy that they got this resolved before we get to Florida and start of spring training. And Hyman said that as recently as the winter warmup, that was his goal. You never know for sure, but that his goal was to have it resolved before then. I think there's only really one guy right now that you can look at potentially additional trades before we get to spring training or early in spring training, and that's Romero. He's a free agent at the end of this season. If the Cardinals don't trade him now, they keep him, which they can from a financial standpoint. It's not a big deal, but I think there's also a real good chance that then he would get flipped at the trading deadline in July and bring you back more prospects in return. So, but it's going to be interesting. Spring training begins next week. The pitchers and catchers report in the middle of the week. Will be on hand down there by the time the first full squad workout. If you haven't made your spring training reservations, and if you sat through the last couple of weeks in St. Louis, I don't know why you haven't booked your ticket to get down there and sit by the Juneau Pier at Juneau Beach, because it's a great time of year. And even though I know it's been cold in Florida too, it was colder in Miami this week than it was in Alaska, but hopefully you get a chance to get down there, and it will warm up down there. We know no doubts about that. Other thing we're excited to announce is we've got some new merchandise. Merch is, I guess, the buzzword that people use it. You can find it on STLSportsPage.com. We've got some spring training products, hats, T-shirts, things like that. So go online. This is a new service that we're just starting out here, so we can't guarantee how quickly it's going to all ship. So if you do want some of this stuff for spring training, I urge you to order it as soon as you can, just to see how long it takes to get to you. So hopefully it'll show up soon. Kind of do good, have fun, watch baseball is kind of a new buzzword that we're going to try to create here as one of our mottos, because it's all three things that we like to do as we go through what we enjoy doing, which is covering Cardinal baseball. And I say we'll be down in Florida for almost all of spring training. Got a lot of plans, coverage plans, as well as our other great team. We had our holiday lunch last week, Mike, and congratulate everybody for all their help. You and Suzanne and David Solomon, of course, does all the audio work for us on the site. So Appreciate everybody's help. Appreciate everybody who reads all of our stuff, not just the Cardinal stories, but our food and travel stories, listens to the audio of the news conferences and the post-game audio after games. So we'll have our daily spring training reports from spring training. We'll be having our Jupiter Minute reports again. We'll have our regular podcast will return on a regular once a week basis, and of course more often if something breaks that we need to do that. So a lot of different ways you can get your fix of Cardinal baseball as we move forward and finally get guys on the field. And of course, one of the biggest things that we're going to be watching when we get down to Florida, Mike, is what's the situation with the stadium? That's kind of the other unknown question that we're going to try to get an answer to.
There are lots of things to watch this spring training, right? Lots of questions. What's going on with the stadium? How's it going to look? And what are the changes that are being made there? My next question that I'm watching is, can Javon Herrera catch? And that's a huge piece of this, right? Because then it totally changes up your dynamic. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I think if Javon Herrera can catch, so if he's your starting catcher on opening day, I think Nolan Gorman is your starting DH on opening day, and Thomas Ajayci starts at third base opening day.
I would say, Mike, one caveat to that is I don't think we know yet for sure how Lars Nootbaar is going to be doing with his recovery from his heels. And if he can't play or has to start the season on the injured list, I'm going to be curious to watch how much work Thomas Ajayci gets in left field.
I was just thinking that too, because when you look at how he hit last year, right? Is he going to hit you, 300 average? He's going to be a lot closer than Arenado was, but he's not going to hit you as many home runs, but he's going to get on base. And for this team, I think that's going to be more important.
The other go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say one more. I have one more bold take that I think this Cardinal team should do before spring training.
What you got?
Or before the season starts. I don't think it will happen, but I think a perfect move for this team right now is to go out and sign a 1-year contract with Framber Valdez, because they need a starter. You can get away with paying a 1-year contract, because what happens if he's really good the first half of the season? All of a sudden, you just got a huge trade piece that you can pick up some more prospects for without really tying up too much of the contract. So that's one move that's still hanging out there that someone will sign, but I really think that the Cardinals would be smart if they signed him to a 1-year contract.
Well, we will see if that happens. The other thing, of course, that was announced on Monday kind of got overshadowed by the Donovan news, is we now have at least a partial resolution to what's going to happen with the Cardinals and the TV broadcasts this year. They're turning over the broadcasts to MLB, just like a bunch of other clubs that were not able to renew their deals with FanDuel Sports because of their bankruptcy issues. So we're still a work in progress, still waiting, seeing how actually that's all going to work out. But if the Cardinals are pretty adamant about the fact that if whatever way you got your TV broadcasts in 2025, you're going to get them the same way in 2026, but probably just on a different channel. If you watched them on cable, if you watched them on satellite, if you streamed them, they're going to hopefully have every game available, or on the national broadcasts as well, just like they were in 2025, but just on a little bit different. So we'll have to, like we kind of learn how to pronounce Mr. Sanya's name. We're going to have to learn exactly what channel they'll tune in to see what channel the games are on.
At the end of the day, you'll flip on your TV. They will be somewhere. Where they will be, we don't know yet, but there will be easy ways to watch it, and you can find out all of that here through this podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, all of that. We are out there, and we will bring you all of the news as we have it.
And don't forget also, if you're not on our newsletter list that we get emailed to directly to your email, usually once a week, it'll obviously be a regular email, of course, now going forward with spring training. So we got a lot of news that we put in that newsletter as well. Sometimes it's stuff that doesn't even show up in other spots of the website. So we do urge you to sign up for the newsletter very easily. Just go to the contact us page at stlsportspage.com, sign up, give us your email, and we will add you to the list for our regular weekly email newsletter. So it's all get started middle of next week. We can't wait to get down to Florida, get warmed up, and see what's going on the field. And obviously, how this trade shakes down is, and as far as whatever other moves Cardinals make, we'll have them all covered for you here. Future editions of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast on stlsportspage.com. For Mike Raines, this is Rob Raines. Stay warm, everybody. We'll talk to you next week from Florida.